the Mindset Athlete podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. I'm a two-time Paralympian and owner of James Robert Fitness, which is an online training, nutrition and mindset coaching business. First of all, I'd like to thank Lauren Williams for suggesting this quote to the show. An athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think and execute. Not because of some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete. By Chris Harth. And each week on the Mindset Athlete, we like to bring you inspirational athletes, a message, or experts talking about human optimization to teach you how to change your perception of your mindset and become 1% better. And on today's show, I've got Lex Gillette. Lex is the best totally blind long and triple jumper in the history of the US Paralympic movement. He is the current world record holder in the long jump, a 4-time Paralympic medalist and a 3-time long jump world champion, and an 18-time national champion. He's the only totally blind athlete to ever eclipse the 22-foot barrier in the long jump. If you think that any of this came easy, you should think again. Many of his fellow 8-year-olds seen riding bicycles, shooting baskets, or frolicking on nearby playgrounds. But Lex was dealing with a far more challenging opponent. His sight began to slowly fade entirely due to recurring retina detachments. 10 operations failed to stabilize what little sight he had left. After the final surgery, Lex's mother had the difficult task of telling her son he would likely never see again. As painful as this was, she vowed to teach Lex everything he would need to know to be successful in life. Her hard work and love were the foundations for Lex's accomplishments. At the age of 19, Lex won his first Paralympic silver medal in the long jump. His achievement at the 2004 Paralympics in Athens was a culmination of years of hard work and training. Since that time, Lex has solidified himself as a tenacious competitor for Team USA. Each of his athletic performances since that time have resulted in medals, with the most recent being gold in the long jump at the 2017 Para-Athletic World Championships. Lex now has his sights set on 2021 Paralympic Games and is currently training and competing to make his 5th consecutive US Paralympic team. There is one goal, and that is to win gold for the United States. And as an athlete, motivational speaker, and singer-songwriter, Lex epitomizes the phrase, "No need for sight when you have a vision." So welcome onto the show, Lex.
Man, I appreciate that, James. That was a nice little introduction. I need to get that updated, actually. My last World Championships goal was 2019 in Dubai.
Well, that gives you something to work on, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's only 2 things. The current World Championships and obviously Tokyo being not this year, but next year.
Yeah,
obviously, you didn't foresee that happening.
Definitely not.
Well, I don't think any athlete did.
Nah.
On that matter. But be it Lex, straight off the bat, obviously, if people haven't seen visually impaired long jump, what would you say to them?
I would say that it is, if I were the person looking at it, I would say, ooh, that's some wild stuff. You have the athlete who is blind, and when we compete in our category as an 11, T11 or F11 athlete, means that you have light perception, little to no sight at all, but they still make us wear a blindfold when we compete. So I actually, I have it right here sitting on my desk, the one that I compete in. And as an athlete, you wear the blindfold. This makes sure that it removes all of your sight. And you have a guide who you work with, and your guide, they have to remain stationary. So the difference with the sprinting events, you can have your guide running directly beside you, giving you the verbal communication, and you're connected by a tether. But when you compete in the long jump, your guide cannot be connected with you. They can't run with you, which means that more times than none, your guide is standing at the takeoff board or the takeoff point, and they're clapping and yelling, giving you that audible reference so you know where to run. And my guy, he yells, fly, 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 fly. I listen to where he is, know which direction to run, and from there, I'm counting my strides in my head. And once I get to my 16th stride, that is when I jump, take off, and land in the sand. So it takes a lot of teamwork, a lot of trust, a lot of communication, and you would expect too that your guide needs to be really loud, because when you're 115 plus feet, 34, 35 meters away from them inside of a huge stadium, there could you got to be loud so that you can hear, given the fact the crowd may be talking or the PA announcer may be talking as well. So
I think from an athlete to athlete, Lex, I think I commend you guys a lot, because I've seen when it goes wrong, and obviously the athlete jumping out of the sandpit and landing back on the surface the other end. So I think you guys have an enormous amount of faith in another individual to make you land on a more comfortable surface, be it the sand.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, it's happened to me once. It's happened to me on one of the bigger stages in 2015 when we were in Qatar, and I ran, jumped, and landed on the outside of the sand pit, which is the track itself. It's hard. It's and in a lot of ways, the edge around the pit itself on a lot of the long jump pits is kind of like concrete, if you will, and so you land on that. It does not feel good at all. But I think that myself and all of the athletes who do it understand that when you get out there, there's a possibility that something like that may happen. And I know me personally, it doesn't scare me. It doesn't make me want to try something different. It's a challenge, and it's one that I take on every single time that I'm out there. But that feeling that I get when I run, jump, and land in the sand, when I soar through the air, that is a feeling that I love. And, it brings so much joy to me.
So obviously going back to the early days of your life, Lex, how much of an influence and a role model has your mother been on your athletic career?
She definitely, I wouldn't say she didn't have any. I think that she was definitely a huge proponent to, getting me outside and finding resources for me so that I could still participate in adaptive sports and rec. And prior to me losing my sight, she used to take me to the park, and we used to go outside and play and play catch. We used to ride bicycles. I did a lot of things with my mom, and I used to play recreational baseball when I could see at the time. And then I was swimming, not competitively, but my mom, she found me some swimming lessons, and so I was able to swim and play around water. After I lost my sight, that was when she found a lot of other outlets for me. I eventually learned about beat baseball and goal ball. And when I was in high school, I began to wrestle. So my freshman and sophomore year, I was on the wrestling team, and eventually I found track and field, and specifically Paralympic track and field, when I was in high school. So I think that the foundation that my mom established for me is what most certainly helped me catapult into the track and field world, for sure.
So what turned you away from goalball then?
Man, you know what? I was a pretty decent goalball player, and I played on a high school team. We went to the nationals my junior and senior year. We got second my junior year, and we ended up winning the youth championships in my senior year. So I was pretty decent. I was good. I got invited to a camp for the national team, so what I would call the major leagues, the big leagues. And once I got there, it's a whole nother ball game. These guys are tossing this ball so fast, and you literally have to be on your P's and Q's. And for me, I'm 6'1", 170 pounds, and that's when I'm in the weight room. If I'm not lifting weights, I'm probably 160 some odd pounds, and so you're out there diving around, and people are throwing their ball 35, 40 miles an hour. That's a different type of type of pain, if you will, and so I said, you know what, in track and field, I don't have to worry about getting hit. I can run freely. I can do my thing. And I just so happen to be, kind of good at it. So I'm going to stick with this. But the goal ballers, man, a lot of respect for them. I actually went to a game in 2016. And shout out to Team USA. They did a phenomenal job out there. But they are throwing that ball, and it's coming at you really fast.
Yeah, but what you alluded to as well is it's almost the weight of a medicine ball. To give some context to people that aren't visually impaired,
yes.
Obviously able-sighted like myself, I don't think most people would want a medicine ball being thrown at them if they can see it.
Right.
Let alone if they can't see it coming.
Yeah, and those guys are so talented. They have ways that they can throw the ball, and for those out there as well, the ball has bells inside of it. So when they roll it, you can hear it. So these guys have different techniques where they can toss the ball and like silence the bells inside it. Like it's just total wizard type stuff going on out there, and they are pretty amazing at what they can do on that goal ball court.
Well, you're not without your accomplishments as well, Rex. And I think you were probably in awe with me reading back what you have accomplished. I think this is where I think we gloss over the process because it's a given because we want to do it anyway. And I think when be it a podcast host, somebody off the street reads back what you were able to achieve. Okay, yours is nearly 20 years. Mine was only 10 years. And you read, you probably achieve more in a life in a short career than most people will be able to realize in their entire life.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy to think about. I'm most certainly proud of everything that I've been able to achieve, and happy that I've had the influences in my life to help me get to that point. But as you mentioned, 2021 is next year. I'm ready to do some more, achieve some more.
Well, I think it's your career is only as long as you want it to make it, and ultimately, you've been very, very successful. And ultimately, there's not very many things that's lower than silver. So I think ultimately, you're a master of your craft, and I applaud you for that. And obviously, may that ever continue.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So talk to me about obviously your phrase, no need for sight when you have a vision, because I think that's very, very clever.
Yeah, it is once I had graduated from college, I was in a space where trying to figure out what the next move was. I had just gotten back from Beijing, and I wanted to start getting sponsors, and I just wanted to expand my opportunities. And I had a very that moment of nostalgia, if you will, where I'm just looking back at my life and like, man, this is crazy. Over the past 4 years, you went from getting on your first international flight, going to compete, going to represent Team USA, being in going through a team processing, where, for those who don't know, team processing is what we go through prior to leaving for the Paralympic Games. And that's where you get sized for your opening ceremonies gear, your closing ceremonies gear. You get all of your competition gear, literally bags and bags and bags and bags of clothes, of shoes, of t-shirts, like just so much stuff. And to have experienced all of that, I couldn't help but think back to when I was 8 years old. And I don't think that any of us would have ever drew up all of this stuff. And it just came to me one day. It was like, at the end of the day, it wasn't the sight that determined your success. It was you having a vision and being able to do everything in your power to bring that into reality. And it's certainly not, people hear that and they say that, oh, that's specific to someone who's blind or visually impaired. But it's definitely, it relates to us all, because sight is not the sole determining factor. It is our ability to see something more, to see beyond the horizon, and be able to take the necessary steps to come up with a plan and go after whatever that vision is relentlessly.
Do you think it's poignant of the times that we're living in now, then, more specifically, Lex?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a lot going on, right? And specifically a lot going on within my country, within the United States. And I feel like a lot of times, like, sight is very much, it's surface level, it's temporary in comparison to vision. And so when you have an authentic vision, something that's real, something that's true, then it should positively impact the hearts and minds of many. And also you understand that if it is something that is going to impact so many, then you have to understand that you don't have to do it alone, and you can't do it alone. So you look at it right now in terms of us trying to get back on our feet with the pandemic. We're learning additional information, more information, I feel like, each week. But it's a group effort at the end of the day. When you go outside, wear your mask. If you go outside, make sure it's for things that you absolutely need. We gotta get on the same page in a lot of ways so that we can, return to normalcy, whatever that might look like post COVID-19.
And then obviously, from you being a Black individual as well, Lex, sorry.
Yeah.
And obviously you can't see me, but being mixed race and living overseas, what is your, and this is more curiosity more than anything, what is your take on Black Lives Matter? Because ultimately you won't actually deem anybody by obviously their color of their skin, because you can't see any differently.
Yeah. And I get that. And as an extension to that, even though that is the case, I mean, of course, I still have a general idea of people's race. But I think the biggest thing as it relates to what's going on right now is I just want people to acknowledge the fact that it's an issue. It's a problem. It's been happening for years upon years upon years. And it's been, when you think about sight and vision as it relates to sight, it's been something that our country has ignored. And I had posted something on Twitter maybe a week or so ago, and someone was asking, how would you explain 2020 to someone who's blind? And my response was, well, it's been my opportunity and my chance to kind of sit back and say, well, in this whole scheme, in this whole in this whole environment, I can truly say that I wasn't the only one who was blind. And our country has lost sight of a lot of important issues over the years. And we're seeing the consequences of it running into these issues head on right now. And it's unfortunate that it had to take precious lives to be taken away. George Floyd Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, there's so many that we hear about publicly, but then there's a lot that you don't hear about as well. And it's unfortunate that it has taken precious lives to be taken for us to get to this point. But I definitely think that it is certainly a conversation that is happening right now, a conversation that needs to continue to happen. And for those who, for people who are white, just stepping into the situation and understanding that, okay, like we need to change some things. We need to adjust some things because there is systemic racism and oppression that looms. There is police brutality. There is disrespect and mistreatment within people of color. And it shouldn't be that way. I think there are definitely obstacles, unnecessary obstacles that are put in the path of Black people. And we should be able to occupy this space equally and safely, just like the next person. So all in all, I want people to acknowledge that it's an issue, have those conversations. It'll definitely be uncomfortable at times for sure. But if we can get on the same page, come to a solution, and then put some action behind the words that we speak, then I think that we can move into a better place. And lastly, it's not a fight just for people of color to fight. I have a lot of friends who just so happen to be white, and they don't subscribe to racism, nor do I believe that everyone in America who is white. I don't believe that everyone who is white does, but there are a lot of people who do. So circling back to the original point, this is a fight for everyone. It's like human rights type stuff. Like we should have the same rights across the board. So we'll see how it all plays out. Excuse me. But it's definitely something that we need to address and take care of.
And do you think up until that point, it was obviously you might like this one, out of sight, so out of mind?
I think so. In a lot of ways, yes. I think that, and certainly not to come across as like insensitive, but it's almost like the pandemic, COVID-19, has kind of lent itself to what is going on in our country in terms of Black Lives Matter, because the world is literally on pause in a lot of ways right now. People are at home. They are probably on social media more. They're not able to go into their offices. They're working from home. They probably get distracted here and there. So they're hopping on their cell phones, getting on Instagram, getting on Facebook, Twitter, what have you. And, when these things started happening, especially the George Floyd killing, that was spreading like wildfire. And given the fact that everything is just basically on pause right now, I think people were able to see that and experience that. And it's like, man, like, what is going on out here? We gotta make some changes. We gotta make it happen. So it's definitely not out of it's not out of sight right now, and it's definitely not out of mind.
And do you think, obviously, with you and obviously you're a person of influence now, Lex, because obviously the amount of accolades that you've achieved outside of sport, the list is endless. Be it Athletes with Disability Network, Male Athlete of the Year, obviously in 2014, Greater Raleigh Sports Council Courage and Character Award recipient, the African American Association of Georgia Life Encouragement Award, and the list goes on. Do you think, obviously, using yourself and obviously your platform as an athlete to be able to obviously advocate for change, is a good one?
Yeah, I think so. I come from Raleigh, North Carolina, and Raleigh is a decent sized city, but I was born in in the LaGrange area, North Carolina, which is a smaller town. And so whenever I go back home and I kind of see, the ins and outs, I think about my family or individuals who live in those types of areas where, their voices may not be heard, or they may not even, maybe they are able to speak, but it doesn't echo as loud as it could. And so I've been blessed to be able to be in this position. And, I definitely feel obligated in a lot of ways to be able to bring those things into the forefront, because a lot of times it's like if you see something going on that needs to change and you don't say anything about it, then you're okay with that continuing to happen. And, I'm certainly not in agreement with, systemic racism and oppression and all of the other egregious acts against people of color. I think that, first and foremost, I feel very thankful and blessed that I haven't had to endure any egregious acts to that capacity. But I have a lot of friends who can't say the same. And so I do have a platform, and I do a lot of speaking, more times than none, is on motivational, inspirational type things. But this is a topic that needs to be addressed as well. And I think when you circle back to the inspiring part, if we all can get on the same page and really get to the point where we acknowledge and fight through this and get equality across the board, that is inspiring. Like that is the world that we want to live in. And so we get to that point, that'll be the ultimate inspiration.
How do we get onto that page though, Lex? Because ultimately, as you and I both know, athletes are kind of wired differently than most of the people in society. We obviously have a common goal to represent, irrespective of where we come from, to represent our country, because that is the pinnacle of, irrespectively whatever sport you do in the Paralympic movement, in the Olympic movement, we're all going in the same direction wherever we come from. So how do you think sport can facilitate society?
That's a really good question. I mean, you're an athlete. You know the power of sport. You know how it is. In London 2012, that was I love London. And the reason being is because I saw that the UK totally is in tune, not only with the Olympic movement, but with the Paralympic movement. And the facilities were amazing. The crowds were amazing. I remember when I was down on the competition field, I was competing in triple jump. I was trying to get myself pumped up, trying to get myself ready to go. And I started clapping my hands, and the entire 85,000 person crowd that was there watching that day started clapping their hands in the exact same pattern that I was clapping my hands. And, after a few seconds, I was like, oh, let's go, I'm ready. And, I put up my finger over my lips, and everyone, they got quiet. They understand how crucial it is for me to be able to hear my guide. And so when you think about a moment like that, that is like the essence of unity. And we were all on the same page just from that one moment in sport. And I just think that, it's things like that can change, people's minds. It can change their hearts, their thinking. in terms of, how do we get everyone else on the same page? Listen, I feel like, as amazing as people feel that we are, no matter the jaw-dropping performances you may see or the amazingness and inspiration that you see from us, at the end of the day, we are the same. We're all human beings. Whether you're an athlete or not, you go home, you may have a family, you may have a job, you may have, you have a community where you live, social interests that you are, that are important to you. And, we should be able to speak on those things. We should be able to, to connect with each other, to make our environment better. Just for that simple fact, just because we are human beings. And, I think that, that's what it is at the end of the day. We can do that. We can get some legislation changed to make this space safe and equal for people of color. And even more than that, we can change mindsets and hearts, then we would most certainly be in a certainly a better place. And I think that in a lot of ways, sport and music, those are two of the biggest things that we all understand. You can come from different backgrounds. You could be a different shade in terms of your race. You could speak a different language, whatever. But those two things, sport and music, we all seem to get on the same page and all seem to understand when they're in the mix.
I think you raise a good point there, Lex, in terms of London and how perceptions towards probably Paralympic sport changed overnight in terms of, well, for us, being a British athlete, that I was fortunate to compete at home games, and hopefully you get the opportunity to make Los Angeles, and then you can experience that for yourself. I think what you echoed there of 80,000 people clapping in unison with you probably comes down to ultimately the people are very much track and field people. They know what the clapping means for triple jumpers and long jumpers. And then when you say hush, even an able-bodied athlete will do that because it's time for me to go. I need to get really in the zone, concentrate on the stride pattern. So I hit the jump exactly to get a white flag. And I think obviously we've still got a long way to go in terms of probably equality with disability, because it's equal on an equal footing to some extent. And obviously from the athlete perspective, we're no longer viewed, I would say in this country, I don't know if it's the same in the US, as you're no longer a disabled athlete, you're an athlete. And obviously I think we fought for that for so long, to be viewed for our ability as opposed to the disability.
Right.
And obviously as your contemporary as an athlete, we will never compete against each other. I know that, but I don't see your disability any different than you see mine.
Right.
Metaphorically.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we are on the same path to glory. We both want that elusive gold medal, irrespective of the games. Everybody is striving for the ultimate goal of winning, and then going from there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But in terms of the one you said specifically, that's going to take time. That's the hard part about it. It's not going to happen overnight.
For sure. And I mean, that's what a lot of things, right? I mean, anything worth having is worth fighting for, and it's going to take time. It's going to take a collective effort. So, again, if people can just kind of, get on the same page and understand that, hey, this is important. And, as humans, this is what we need to work on so that we can make this space better for all walks of life. And I very much believe that, I don't know, one of my biggest goals is just to leave this place better than what it was when I got here. And I feel like, we should always try to make situations and environments better so that the people who come after us will be able to enjoy it, and they won't have to endure some of the obstacles and challenges that we may have had to face on the journey.
I think your book is very poignant then, in terms of, fly, find your own wings and soar above life's challenges. And I think you talked about obviously leaving a legacy in a way after you've gone.
Yeah.
Well, to me, I think that's an aspiration for everybody. Soar above life's challenges and actually look to uplift, be it your contemporaries, your other people.
And it's I'm sorry not to cut you off. Certainly uplifting them, but and then also letting them know that there is going to be some sort of challenge. There's going to be some sort of struggle. But even though that is the inevitable, continue to fight, continue to work, continue to stay latched on to those who care and appreciate you and who want to see you do better. And once you kind of come to that space, it's like, all right, well, whatever it is, I can spread my arms and fly.
But do you think, obviously with you, do you ever think that you were held back, or that your disability held you back? Or do you think because your mother set you up in the right way, it wasn't really adversity?
Man, that's a really good question. I think that there were challenges. I think once I transitioned into life without eyesight, fortunately, I did have my mom, who was a strong advocate for me. So from the time that I was 8, 9 years old until I graduated from high school, she was very much involved in every aspect of life. And so the challenge for me during those years came more so from a social standpoint, and, like trying to explain to friends and people my sight and what happened, and, why do your eyes look differently, and, just all those types of things. But when it came to the academic piece and the athletic piece, I had people who were in my corner, and as they exposed me to those opportunities, it started changing my perception and my thinking. And that ultimately increased my confidence, so that moving forward, I was like, you know what, I can totally do this. I can make this happen. But I would say once I got into college, that is when the advocacy piece shifted. I mean, my mom was still involved to a certain degree, but once you go to college, you're a young adult. You should be, handling a lot of those things on your own. And that's what I had to begin to do. I had to go and set up my classes. I had to learn how to get from classroom to classroom, or from building to building, learn where the cafeterias were, learn how to catch the bus to the other side of campus. And once I moved off of campus, I had to learn where the bus stop was and navigate to that to get to campus. I had to make friends. I had, like you're living your life in college. And so I had to make the switch. So from a social standpoint, I feel like that's when I truly began to mature, because there was no way that I could hide behind the curtain, if you will. I couldn't hide behind my mom and let her do the talking. I had to do the talking for myself. And yeah, that college experience was pretty awesome. Helped me out a lot.
Do you think that set you up for success on the athletic stage then?
I think so. It was almost like I had fit another piece to the puzzle. and the picture became that much more clear. Even though I had a strong foundation, specifically with, knowing how to run, knowing how to lift weights. When I was in college, I had to find someone to help me continue working out. I didn't have Brian Whitmer there anymore. Brian Whitmer was he's the individual who introduced me to Paralympic sport. And he was a high school teacher. Once I got to college, he wasn't there anymore. And he ended up moving to Georgia. So now I had to continue to train and do that in hopes of making the Paralympic Games team. I mean, that was my goal. So, I reached out and found a student within the exercise and sports science department at East Carolina University. And we worked together. We wrote workouts and strength and conditioning plans, and I was able to continue my training. But again, it was from that previous tutelage that I had from my mom and Brian Whitmer that really helped me to see that, okay, this is possible. You can do this.
And memory serves me, Lex, is the mascot of East Carolina a pirate?
It is.
Isn't that a little bit ironic?
Yep, for sure.
So we've got a little bit of humor in there as well. But do you think, obviously, you going back to the earlier days of you being an 8-year-old now, could you have ever foreseen you being as successful as you are now in 2020?
That's a tough question. I'm gonna say no. You at 8 years old, I was in and out of the hospital every month or so. I had to return to the hospital to get an operation. I was able to see at certain points, and then the sight would decrease and get worse. It would get blurry, and each visit and operation, my sight would get even more blurry than what it was the time before. And it was just a lot going on during that space. So I don't know. I don't think that I would have ever imagined anything like this happening. And then after the doctor says that, okay, you're going to be blind, you go home, you go through your normal routine, you go to sleep at night, you wake up the next morning, you see a little less than what you do the day before, and then one day you wake up and you're not able to make out much of anything. That was really tough. So certainly would have never thought anything like this.
And obviously it's very difficult for you to be able to describe it, Lex. Is it quite scary to ultimately, obviously that final day, and it's just pitch black, or to that effect?
I feel like, in all honesty, I think my journey specifically, since that entire year was me in and out of the doctor's office and the hospital, a lot of me feels like subconsciously I was already preparing for what that next step was going to be and what that reality would eventually be. And doesn't mean that it wasn't scary, but I certainly feel very strongly that I was already moving to that space, like mentally, like, okay, this is nothing's changed. Nothing is changing. Those first few operations, like the first 2 or 3, you're optimistic and you're saying that, oh, okay, wow, man, this is going to work. This is going to happen. You move into the 5th or 6th one, then it's, okay, I've done this before. Maybe this is going to help. You move into the 8th, 9th, and 10th operation, then it's almost like, okay, been here, done that, didn't work the times before, probably won't work this time. and then you finally get the verdict from the doctor, and you're basically like, I kind of saw this coming, no pun intended.
But how do you pick yourself up from that, Lex? Because ultimately, it is quite a pessimistic route. Obviously, from the very, first, second, and third, quite optimistic and very positive thinking to ultimately, these probably won't work out, which is obviously very negative in people's perceptions of it. How do you obviously pick yourself up from that?
Well, I think first and foremost, man, kids are pretty amazing. They're remarkable in their thinking, how they operate, how they move, they're just totally resilient. And I say that just based off of the work and connection that I have with different organizations and mentorship, et cetera. And so, they just kind of pick it up and keep it moving. I think that also has a lot to do with the influences that are in their life. And, I'm beating a dead horse when I say, my mom, she was a really huge influence for me. I had my grandmother as well. I had so many different people in my life who were able to get me out of that dark space, if you will. And I definitely remember times where my mom would get on me for holding my head down and, not really, like, come on, like there's still life to live at the end of the day. And I love to hear her tell this story of when she was in our living room, and I guess she was like meditating or praying or something. And I run up to her and I said, "Hey, Mom, I need to learn how to read dots." And she said that was a huge weight off of her shoulder, because that let her know that, okay, my son, he gets it and he understands that this is reality moving forward. And I think that's when she decided to devote all of her time and energy into finding all of the resources, tools, programs, people, whoever she could find, whatever she could find, that could, help shape and mold me into a, well-rounded human being. And I had so many people, other blind and visually impaired people who helped, people who didn't have any sort of visual impairment helped as well. I had so much mentoring from so many different people. And between all of those perspectives and minds and viewpoints, just exposed me to a lot of things that I feel like helped me climb out of that dark space and ultimately help me see that, okay, you can occupy the space and you can contribute to the world just like the next person. And it doesn't matter that you're blind.
So let me ask you this then. How has life changed for you during this pandemic, from going from obviously not knowing if Tokyo was going to happen this year or next, to how your training has evolved?
Well, first and foremost, I train with a guide. So given the fact that we're not able to be closely connected, that's definitely altered training a bit. I'm with my guide, training alongside him every single day, basically. And it's been tough not having that opportunity, not having that chance. I mean, we're essentially like brothers. My guide, Wesley Williams, we've been working together since 2007. And, it's been a phenomenal journey, ups and downs and wins and challenging moments, all of those types of things. And so now when everything transpired with the coronavirus, just can't get out there and train the way I normally would. I've just kind of been training here in my place, getting out every now and then on the track to get some very light workouts in. But I've been having to get very creative out there. So, for example, I have my iPhone and a Bluetooth speaker, and I'll walk down to an open space, use my cane to kind of clear out a really big piece of open area, and I'll set my Bluetooth speaker up, turn on the Drake radio or Kanye West radio, somebody blast the music. And so that'll give me I'll put it maybe 25, 30 meters away. And that'll give me an idea of how much space I have to roam around. And my starting point, I may have my backpack or some sort of tactile indicator that lets me know, okay, this is where you need to start. And I'll do my drills. I'll do some accelerations and things like that. But definitely have had to be creative, have had to think out of the box and do things differently. But we're slowly starting to transition to the point where we can get back out there successfully, but got to go through the necessary steps so that we can do it safely and be able to get back on the road to Tokyo. But the awesome thing is that we have a decent amount of time to get ready. So as long as I can stay in some sort of shape at this point, that's the main thing. And then once we're able to get back out there fully, then I'll be able to hit it hard like I normally would.
So my penultimate question to you, Lex, on before we wrap up the episode, is if you had to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive, who would that be and why?
Any athlete, dead or alive? Man, that is a hard question. I'm going to say John Carlos. John Carlos, 200-meter bronze medalist, 1968, Mexico City. And we recently were on a podcast or a panel together talking about mentorship and activism. And people like Dr. Carlos, man, you just have to sit there, listen, and soak up all of the knowledge, all of the stories, all of the advice, the guidance. He is a wealth of knowledge. And so when you think about the current climate within the United States and Black Lives Matter, all I could do was sit there and marvel at the things that he had to say. And I was a participant on the panel. And I'm sitting here thinking like, man, what I have to say is nothing like as poignant and impactful as what he has to say. And of course, I mean, we're our own worst critics. So I hope that I added some value to the conversation. But to my point, someone like him, I mean, he's seen a lot of things, experienced a lot of things. And I think moving forward, it's like, I want to learn as much as possible. I want him to pass me, figuratively speaking, the baton so that, in a lot of ways, I can continue to run this race and make the world and this country a better space.
And my final question before we wrap up the episode then, Lex, if you had to summarize what we've been speaking about today into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
I'm going to say this is a hard one. I'm gonna steal a sentence from my book, Fly, and it's from the chapter entitled "No Need for Sight When You Have a Vision." And at the end, I basically say, when we leave this earth, our sight is gone, but our vision can live forever.
That's a good one. That's a good one to leave on. So once again, Lex, thanks again for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, the pleasure's been all mine. If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends and do let Lex and I know what you thought of this episode by tagging us over on Instagram at Lex Gillette. So that's LEXGILLETTE. And as always, James O. Roberts 11. So that's JAMES, the letter O, ROBERTS, and the number 11. And again, you can do the same on Twitter and Facebook. And in addition, if you had any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to shoot them over as well. And finally, don't forget to check his website out. That's lexgillette.com. So that's LEXGILLETTE.com. And as always, don't forget to check out my free content at fitamputee.co.uk. So that's FITAMPUTEE.co.uk and click on the tab resources. But not forgetting, I've also started a new Facebook group, especially for the podcast, which you can find by typing in The Mindset Athlete. And last but not least, and not forgetting, I've also rebranded my other Facebook group to AIM 24/7 Fat Loss Support Group. So come and check out the AIM tribe. The links will be in the description. You can find all the show notes at mindsetgame.libsyn.com under the category General. So once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mindset Athlete podcast.